Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering from ELD's Timefall Games. Kenton on Painter versus Lucas on Grixis Delver. Both players taking advantage of the powerful Orcish Bowmaster. I think one of the interesting things about that card is it'll, over time, I think, illustrate just the power of Brainstorm and Ponder. Unlike Chalice of the Void, where those cards aren't likely to do anything thanks to being countered, Orcish Bowmaster just gives them a drawback, and while that drawback is very painful, there are plenty of times where you'll actually just lose the game because your opponent's Brainstorm is that good. Very interesting card that punishes it while still showcasing that sometimes it's better to just draw the 3 cards now and potentially win the game to just get beaten down over the next 3 turns and have 0 shot. Force of Will stopping the Goblin Engineer. Very back and forth gameplay so far. We had a Pyroblast on the Delver of Secrets and 2 threats in the same turn. Urza's Saga along with a Goblin Engineer. Lucas had Wasteland and Force of Will to take care of those. They became a problem the cleanest way possible. Goblin Engineer, of course, once it enters the battlefield, you're going to be getting that extra value of putting a card into the graveyard, as we're seeing now. Phyrexian Dragon Engine. Lucas has landed a Baleful Strix. Hand tripping. It's probably about as bad as it gets, honestly, in terms of his matchups. Baleful Strix is going to do very, very little in this match. All of the creatures on the other side are things that don't beat you by attacking. Goblin Welder, Goblin Engineer, Painter Servant. Those are all part of the combo, and very rarely does it actually turn into a situation where you're beating down. It'll offer a little bit of a reprieve against the construct tokens from Urza's Saga, but again, not amazing, as the Urza's Saga actually creates 2 constructs over its life, as well as fetching up a potential combo piece. Thoughtseize fairly underwhelming there, as Kenton's hand left with just a Lightning Bolt. Top decking that Great Furnace for the Goblin Engineer's activated ability. Really strong. Phyrexian Dragon Engine just puts in the work, man. It's a 2/2. Now you can unearth it, but it was just when it enters the battlefield from your graveyard. So if you're welding it in, still getting that incredible draw 3, meaning that opposing Bowmasters are actually not dead. We've got that and Fable, so this Painter deck, despite not having access to blue, has a considerable amount of card drawing. Try and pull the combo together. And Kenton swinging in there would have been totally fine, obviously, with his Dragon Engine dying and getting another go. Instead, he's got a Fable. Sticks, he gets a body. Would have blocked there as Lucas, a Dragon Engine, somewhat safer on board than it is in the graveyard. At least you know what you got here. It's 4 damage. Or winning that race. And one more swing from this Murktide will do it. Just got to hold down the fort for one more turn. Can Lucas do it? The turn, welding out. And Orcish Bowmaster. Response to the Fable. Kenton removing the Bowmaster, so he can draw some cards here. Murktide is Pyroblasted. Total. Changing for Dragon Engine one more time. Man, that Bowmaster would have put in some serious damage, but only when he's on the battlefield, and he is just a 1/1, so a somewhat fragile card. This still has Dragon Rage Channeler. 5 points of life on the other side. Tapping Ancient Tomb, a dangerous proposition here. To make something happen. Down to 3. Painter's Servant. Lock the Orc on the ground. Baleful Strix draws into a Brainstorm. Brainstorm on the stack. Kenton clears the Dragon Rage Channeler. Oh, and Bolt comes off the top. What are you going to do? The Dragon Rage would have dealt lethal in the air. Instead, it is a Lightning Bolt. Very close game one. It's quite a finish to a hard-fought game, back and forth. The thing about Painter is it's always right on the edge. It's winning out of nowhere. It's a fairly cheap combo. It's hard to stop. I mean, the Urza's Saga, of course, Counter Magic, also not super effective against it. They can weld back the pieces. Of course, so you can also win with only a single artifact on board. For example, activate Grindstone and then weld it out for the Painter. When the ability actually resolves, there's a Painter Servant in play. So, pretty rough. Painter has some options to choose from here in terms of what colors to name. Obviously, blue is going to enable the Pyroblasts and Red Blasts to maximum damage, but we did see Snuff Out on the other side as well, so changing the creatures to black provide protection against the free removal spell. Kenton leading off. Gets to play against a turn 1 Delver. Ancient Tomb, so 4 mana available to him here on the second turn. And an Orcish Bowmaster looking to take out this Delver. Force pitching Murktide, wow. Really committing to this Delver sticking around and also not having to deal with this Bowmaster, his Orc buddies. Oh, but Pyroblast forces the issue. He is on board. That Snuff Out not going to be able to remove him. Just going to need to ponder anyways, so going to be taking a point and growing the Orc army. The Delver. Got a Bolt on the other side, so he can actually remove this. I think that goes to show some of the strength of Ponder and Brainstorm. Electing to just go ahead and take the little bit of extra damage as a tempo consideration. See if Snuff Out ends up taking out any of these creatures or if he names. Okay, so we have a Brainstorm. Kenton announces his trigger. Lucas responds with a Bolt, so he will not do a Giant Growth or more Howl of the Hunger Pack. 3 permanent +1/+1 counters plus an extra Bolt to the face. Too high there, especially when he's got a Bolt to make sure that doesn't happen. And another Bolt takes out the Painter Servant. So just the Orc army right now, along with this Urza's Saga. Still a tough spot. Any point I mean, Lucas really needs some type of board presence. His deck does not do well unless it has threat to be closing out the game. This is not like a traditional control deck. Snuff out. Takes out a construct token. And that's a wrap there. Yeah, that construct actually drawing the removal while the Orc army continues to push through damage. That was unusual for Painter. Things just got out of hand, and Lucas wasn't able to keep a threat on board. Still did not see Painter actually do its thing of milling out his entire deck and just beat down with damage, which, you know, can happen when you have a creature-based combo. Lucas, wow, there's a spicy one there at the back of his hand. The Fire Covenant, that's a 3-mana Wrath effect. See if that comes into play. Or saw Fire Covenant way back in the day with Mog Maniac as a turn 2 kill casual decks. Turn 1 your Mog Maniac and then swing for 1. Hit your own creature for 19. You got a reverse Jackal Pup effect. Whenever he takes damage, your opponent takes that much damage. It was not good, but it was funny. Goblin Engineer, putting that Dragon Engine into the bin. When I mentioned Delver wants to have some type of block, I mean, I wasn't exactly talking about Baleful Strix, a 1/1 flyer, not precisely where you want to be. Fable of the Mirror Breaker. See here a Surgical Extraction for Lucas, so again, it's actually going to be pretty unlikely that Kenton wins through comboing, given the Surgical. A lot of the time the combo does go through the graveyard, so can happen, but Surgical, a totally reasonable card against this deck. Brazen Borrower, bouncing the token from Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Wasteland takes out Urza's Saga. Very interactive gameplay here. Cards like Urza's Saga can take over the game if not kept in check, but Lucas, having the right answers at the right time, still has some counter spells in hand. And after the draw, he's going to go ahead and Surgical. The Urza's Sagas, hoping to snag one from hand. See a Painter Servant, a Pyroblast, a Bolt in the Mirror Breaker. Interesting to note that multiple Fables do eventually create a kind of comical advantage. Those backsides are not legendary. They're just reflections of Kiki. There can be any number of them. And, you know, mirrors staring at each other like a Papagino's go infinite. And might know that reference. Be able to pay 1. Copies of each other. Well, not infinite. 1 for each mana you have. Just 2 mana here, but still functioning. Getting some damage on board. Swinging with that Baleful Strix. This could turn into a 2-turn clock pretty quickly with Delver flipping and Dragon's Rage Channeler getting Delirium. As it is right now, not very impressive, but things could change quickly. Lightning Bolt, targeting the Dragon Rage. Now, Lucas has a bunch of permission in his hand. It's a real decision here. This is a dangerous board. Do you actually let your opponent take care of your creature? Or are you gonna save that for the combo finish? He's going to force pitching Daze. Doesn't think Daze is going to have more use than just being a blue card. Exile. That bolt, I believe, can be pushed through. I think there's still a Pyroblast in hand. He forces the issue. And a Grindstone. So it's the quest for Painter right now. There is a Fire Covenant. If Lucas gets a third mana, completely wipe the other side of the board. Murktide. It's a big boy. Pyroblast. Kenton saving it. Could have fought over the Dragon Rage. Instead, he still has it for when it matters. Got the Fire Covenant now. Seeing it in action. Here we go. Taking out all the creatures. See some activations happening. Actually kills his own Baleful Strix to grow the Dragon Rage Channeler. Delver stubbornly refusing the flip. And during the end step, making a bunch of copies of Kiki-Jiki. Or copies of the reflections of Kiki-Jiki. 4 damage coming in. Lucas down to 3. Creating another copy, creating more copies. The juggling act here. Down to 9. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier. Murktide. Two mana. 5 mana. Wow. Chaos Defiler. This card does not work the way that it looks. That is just an absolute blowout. So when it enters the battlefield or dies, for each opponent, choose a non-land permanent that player controls. Destroy one of them at random. Well, when you're only playing against one opponent, that's literally just a Vindicate on a stick, 5/4 Trampler to boot, and an incredible addition from the 40k decks for Kenton as he pulls out a very well-played match. Thank you for watching. For more magic from ELD's Time Vault games, be sure to subscribe and check out more videos just for you over here.